Hello, we are going to look at hypothesis testing. And hypothesis testing, it helps us to draw a conclusion about a population based on assembled data. Hypothesis testing helps us to determine whether there is enough evidence to support or reject a specific claim. Okay, so hypothesis testing is based on mutually exclusive events, and mutually exclusive events means that one event cannot occur at the same time as another event. Okay, or we can say that two events cannot occur at the same time. That is basically the definition of the meaning of being mutually exclusive. Okay, and there are two types of hypothesis. This is the null hypothesis. The first one is the null hypothesis. The second one is the alternative hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis is actually the opposite of null hypothesis. For example, if we have, let's say, this season, Messi will score more than 20 goals. So, this one will be our null hypothesis. Messi scoring more than 20 goals will be our null hypothesis. And the opposite of that will be alternative hypothesis, which is denoted by HA, which will be Messi will score less than 20 goals. Yeah. So our first step is to find out which one is the null hypothesis and which one is the alternative hypothesis. So the first step in our hypothesis testing is finding out. The second one is collecting data. Collecting data means here we are getting enough evidences to support the null hypothesis. For example, let's say we have a person who has been taken to court and we know that this person is not guilty. At the back of our mind, we know that this person is not guilty. So we are trying to prove that actually this person is not guilty. So we'll get enough evidences to prove that. And by evidences, I mean that maybe you will take the fingerprint, maybe some witnesses. So if we get enough evidences to prove, if we actually prove that this person is not guilty, if we prove that this person, so the null hypothesis here, the null hypothesis is like our negative statement, and this one is like a positive. Alternative hypothesis is like a positive statement. Okay, we have said that this person, we have proved, we have gotten enough data to actually prove that this person is actually not guilty. So we'll say that this one is a true negative. In other words, it's true that this is a null hypothesis. You see, the first case we were defining our null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. And our null hypothesis here is this person being not guilty. So we have taken enough evidences to support that this person is not actually, we have proved that this person is not guilty. So these are true negative, or we may call it, okay, these are true negative. If we have supported that this person is not actually guilty, it means we are agreeing that this is a null hypothesis. In other words, we may say that we have failed to reject the null hypothesis. That's a good way to interpret that. So, if we are agreeing with the null hypothesis, it means we have failed to reject the null hypothesis. We have failed to reject the HO. Okay, another scenario is that maybe we don't have enough evidence to prove that this person is not guilty. If we don't have enough evidence to prove that this person is not guilty, it means this person, if he's not guilty, it means he is actually guilty. So if this person is guilty, it means we are supporting the alternative hypothesis. This one, we are supporting the alternative hypothesis. So our next scenario, if we don't have enough evidence to prove that this person is not guilty, we will say that this person, we are supporting the alternative hypothesis. So it will be a false positive, since he is not actually guilty. We know that this person is not guilty, but because we don't have enough evidences, we are saying that this person is guilty. So it will be a false positive. Okay? It will be a false alternative. Okay. And this one, being a false positive, we call it type 1 error. Okay, we call it type 1 error. Type 1 error, or we may, in other words, we may say that we have rejected the null hypothesis. Okay? Okay, let's now go to alternative hypothesis. In alternative hypothesis, we know that in our mind, this person is guilty. If this person is guilty and we have collected enough data to prove that this person is actually guilty, we will say that this is a true positive. Since this person is guilty and we have proved, we have enough data, we have enough evidences to prove that this person is guilty, we'll say that this is a true positive. Okay? And being true positive, it means this is an alternative hypothesis. Being an alternative hypothesis, it means it is the opposite of the null hypothesis. Being the opposite of the null hypothesis, it means we may say that it has rejected. We have rejected the null hypothesis. Yeah. Okay. The next scenario is that we know that this person is guilty, but we don't have enough evidence to prove that this person is guilty. So since we don't have enough evidence to prove that this person is guilty, we may say that, okay, this person is not guilty. Okay, we'll say that this person is not guilty. So it will be a false negative. You see, it will be a false negative, a false null hypothesis. It is not actually a null hypothesis, but since we don't have enough evidence to prove that this person is guilty, we will say that this person is not guilty. Okay? And by saying that this person is not this person is a false negative, it means we may say that it has failed to reject the null hypothesis. By this, it means that we are agreeing with the null hypothesis. So if you are agreeing with the null hypothesis, it means you have failed to reject that null hypothesis. Okay. This one, a false negative, we call it type 2 error. So we have type 2 error here, and we had type 1 error. So type 1 error is a false positive. It is a false alternative. Type 2 error, it is a false negative. It is a false null hypothesis. Okay. And we have some ways to test the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. We may use the p-value. We may use the t-test. There is another one called ANOVA test. And another one called the z-test. I guess we have seen this in college. So just to state the p-value, we may say that if p-value is less than 0.05, if it is less than 0.05, we will say that we have rejected the null hypothesis. Okay? If we are rejecting the null hypothesis, it means we will go with alternative hypothesis. Okay, and this 0.05, it is like an hyperparameter. So this one is called significant.